believe in abortion and a woman's right to choose.
Well, good evening and welcome to Socrates in the City. It is great. You can applaud. It's great to see. No, that's really not appropriate, please. But it's great to see so many of you here. As you know, we were totally sold out for this event. In fact, just because of sheer stupidity on the part of my staff, not me. No, all right, I admit it. It was I. Who was sheerly stupid. And I have to tell you, we oversold this to the extent that you got an email yesterday, I think, saying if some people wouldn't mind staying home, we'd be very, very grateful. Anyway, you know that we tried to tempt a number of you like the... Yeah, because you've already found the video, I think. All right, anyway, happy that many of you will be watching this online and that some of you are watching it online. And we're filling this room right now. You can't, though, Irish people and so on and so forth, people born in Ireland, it's just very exotic for us. Most of us are of simple Dutch stock in this room. And we don't know where to go. Yes. Anyway, I have to explain that to Dr. Lennis. He's never been insulted in that way before, and I do apologize in advance. Most of us have literally never seen an Irishman before. That's just the way it is in this room. We expected a big 6'5" fellow, big shock of red hair and freckles all the way back to Killarney, don't you know? And so...
And I was talking to myself the whole time with nobody listening. Welcome, Beep. I was just watching the video you sent. Invited you to come on stage if you like. No pressure, obviously. Hope it's not too boring like you already watched it. But then we'll do some other stuff. I got some other videos and ideas prepped. So that's generally the plan. Welcome.
That's just who we are. We're simple New Yorkers. A quick word about who D-Phil, DSC, Notorious B.I.G. S. Lewis. John is married to Sally. They have 3 grown-up children and 4 grandchildren and live near Oxford. Ladies and gentlemen, please a warm Socrates in the City welcome for our special guest this evening,
sweet.
Dr. John Lennox. You must eventually forgive me. Please.
I'm sure, like you, ladies and gentlemen, you are enjoying the one-man show. It's a great pleasure for me to be invited to speak to this forum, Socrates in the City, because Socrates is one of my great intellectual heroes. Now, I ought to preface my remarks by saying that I am a mathematician, and the received definition of a mathematician is a person who talks in other people's sleep. But a mathematician who is 5 hours jet-lagged is in serious danger of going to sleep in his own lecture. Which, incidentally, has happened on at least 3 occasions that I know of. Eric asked me to tell you a little bit about C.S. Lewis, which is not part of this talk. But my memories of him are very vivid. And he used to lecture in the English Lecture Theatre in Mill Lane in Cambridge, just virtually next door to the pub where the announcement of the decoding of the double helix was announced in 1953. It was just across the road from the Mathematics Institute, so when the maths got boring, I would sneak out and go and listen to Lewis. The room was about this.
Can you imagine that? How incredible would that be that you just like work at this?
Absolutely packed. People sitting on the floor, and there was just space for him to come through the double doors and wend his way up to the podium. It was winter. It was very cold, and Lewis was a big, heavy man who wore a big, heavy coat and a big scarf and a hat. So he came through the door and immediately started to lecture before he'd taken coat, hat, or scarf off. But he proceeded to lecture as he made his way up to the podium, so by the time he got to the podium, he probably had his scarf off. And then he'd take his hat off and put it down and his coat off, and by the time all that was done, he was way into the lecture, word perfect. I can't remember him using notes. The interesting thing was when he finished the lecture, he reversed this process. So still lecturing, he'd put on his hat, wipe up his scarf, put on his coat, and the last words would be uttered as he disappeared out through the door. There was no opportunity for questions. Those were dealt with in the private tutorials. Socrates, of course, was a man who is famous for asking questions. I came across him very early in life, and I spent my life trying.
Hold on, my Wi-Fi is really, really shitting the bed right now. I gotta figure this out. Okay. As much as I just like to watch this in peace, I might need to restart my router. Like it should work. I hate Spectrum. I hate Spectrum. I hate Wi-Fi companies and phone companies more than anything, really. I need to have more patience with these things, but like, okay, so everything's great, yet I'm dropping frames. I've dropped 63% of the frames. What is this even? Okay, we're back, I guess. I guess we're back. Okay. Just a lag spike or something. All right, we'll go back to the video. Welcome, everybody. We're watching John Lennox explain Genesis in the context of Christianity. It should be a fascinating discussion. And he's just reminiscing about a person he was extremely fortunate to get to meet and sit in on his lectures. C.S. Lewis, the esteemed apologist, author, my personal favorite apologist and perhaps author, fantasy author, children's author, whatever you want to classify him as. It's a little reductive to call C.S. Lewis a children's author, I think. I think his stories are just so good that even children could enjoy them. That's what I think. But
trying to ask questions and to get answers to them in order to ascertain which of the two major competing worldviews is true.
This in here.
Our society is divided.
Yo, little bro. 539. How it do, brother? Welcome. You're in the Twitch chat there. Appreciate you joining the channel. Feel free. What we do here, we sort of do apologetics. We sort of do conversations, philosophical conversations. So if you have any sort of questions, the claim I typically present to people is God is real, prove me wrong. And the secret trick is you're not going to prove me wrong. But I encourage you to give me your best effort. And if you're here just to, because you agree or just to hang out or anything, you also feel free to drop questions, comments, join the Discord. We can talk in person. We have like a meme channel and everything. So, not that, that's the big selling point. The memes. That's not exactly the selling point. But until we get some engagement and some chats and some, back and forth going, we're going to kind of watch this video, which should be interesting.
In the academy, we have a clash between two fundamentally opposed worldviews. The one is naturalism, that believes that this universe is all that ever existed or ever will exist, and that therefore all explanation has to be bottom up in terms of mass and energy. The other worldview is theism, and in my case, Christian theism, that says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Never was there a more profound challenge to the naturalistic worldview. I remember in the 60s in Cambridge, when evidence of a beginning to space-time began to come in. It was seriously resisted by the scientific establishment.
Hey, welcome. What's up, Infamous? How you doing, brother?
That's good.
Chilling. We're just, there's no specific, I kind of just kept the title the same. There's no specific topic today. Just watching John Lennox.
Sick?
Sorry, what?
So are you sick?
And maybe a little bit. Do I sound sick?
Yeah, your nose sounds clogged.
Yeah, my nose has been stuffed for the last week. I hate that. It's annoying. Especially because I have a show tonight and tomorrow. So it's like, whatever. Just be the sick comedian coughing into the mic. But whatever.
Yeah, all you have to say is being like, I'm sick today, so I'm expecting God to tell me to fail.
Yeah, expecting God to tell me to what?
I'm expecting God to... God is probably telling me to fail.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is a trial period God's putting me through.
Yeah.
The sick
So
comedian.
I'm convinced now that I have to be a preacher, so I've changed the show tonight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I remember a long time ago, I made a joke to another comedian where I was like, at this point, I'm either going to be a stand-up comedian the rest of my life or a priest or something. And then he was like, he thought I was joking entirely, and even I thought I was joking entirely.
And you can be a preacher instead of a priest. You can go to seminary.
I mean, preacher, whatever. I think I don't even know what I said, like pastor,
You said priest. I was like, okay.
Yeah, well, priest is I probably will not be. It's a low probability of me becoming a priest in any sense. But I was like, yeah, I'll either be a pastor or a stand-up. And I at this point I don't know which one is which. And she's like, really? And then fast forward just like a couple months later, here we are doing both, sort of. Humbly, not really. I'm not a pastor in any regard, so don't take my word pastorally. But yeah, it's funny how things turn out. Okay. So John Lennox, this is a topic we are familiar with. He's about to explain the distinction. Well, he just explained the distinction between naturalism and his worldview, which is Christian theism. Actually, I don't remember what his exact definition of naturalism is, but kind of import whatever you think it is, and that'll probably work for the purposes of this. And he is reminiscing on his time. John Lennox is a mathematician at Cambridge, who actually knew C.S. Lewis, interestingly enough, as like a student to teacher sort of relationship, but irrelevant because he's a mathematician. C.S. Lewis was a linguist, so they didn't like work together, whatever. But he's reminiscing about the time at Cambridge when they were discovering the Big Bang and the potential implication that space-time had a beginning, and we'll see where he takes that.
The then editor of Nature, Sir John Maddox, said, we cannot go down this road of believing that there was a beginning because it will give too much leverage to people who believe the Bible. In other words, here was science being resisted because it appeared to run parallel to what Scripture said. Now we know that...
Pause. Yeah, someone said something. That thing just so happened to be true as well.
Yeah.
However, what happened?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think
It
that
came out, like-
refutes what John Lennox says at all. But what
Well,
you
I mean,
would
that happens
not
in every
expect.
breakthrough.
But what?
So, like, how is this
what?
going to affect the world? Like, because, like, I mean, especially in things like, you know, more extreme cases like the atom bomb. It's like,
Sure.
well, the science is right and it's the truth.
Uh-huh.
But what should we do? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. There's different components to every discovery. There's like a moral, especially something like the atom bomb. There's a moral component, but there's the scientific component, and there's sort of. But so to the point of this anecdote or something is that, well, you know, I don't want to even.
some people wanted to suppress science for.
I think people
theology
wanted
reasons. Yeah, sure.
and that is what that's relevant to what we were talking about a couple times. That would be what I would define as scientism. And I actually heard a better word for it.
That's like the opposite of science, dude.
Scientific dogmatism or something. No. Scientism is when you resist real science in order to like push force your personal agenda or beliefs about the universe. So if the real science comes out
scientism.
and I don't know any other definition
theists
for it.
can do that, right?
Certainly, that's theists can do that, but people that
I mean,
pretend.
if that's just what you want to define as that, fine. Again, like this scientism thing, like I don't care for.
Well, I know you don't care for it because you sometimes border on being one, but no, you don't. You don't. I don't. No, I won't give you that. I won't put that on you or ascribe that to you because I haven't heard you particularly make those types of science of the gap arguments, except perhaps when it comes to the transcendental categories where you just are happy to leave it at a brute fact. But
well, I mean, I don't think that science can investigate that area of reality because it doesn't have any.
Sure.
Like you can't really observe it. You can experience it, I guess.
Yeah, well, we'll leave that for a different thing. But the way this is what I mean by the scientism is okay. So there's the Big Bang is coming out, or like coming out. It's dropping a new album. The scientific community is discovering the Big Bang, the potential that there is a beginning to space and time, which happens to, in your view, but I think naturally confirms the creation story that we're giving in Genesis.
It does not confirm it at all.
Oh, it confirms for sure.
It confirms that there's a beginning. It does not confirm the creation story.
Okay, it confirms the first sentence of the creation story, right? Okay, it confirms some element of the creation story. If it were
okay, it doesn't necessarily.
Well, no, it doesn't necessarily, but it certainly doesn't give any.
Is it evidence towards it instead of a static internal universe? Sure.
Yes.
It's more in line, I would agree.
Yeah.
But like,
right.
Actually,
with the presumption
of
before was an infinitely regressive universe or some sort of like, infinite.
A static universe, yeah.
Static, sure, universe. So what John Lennox is saying, there were scientismists, is what I'm going to call, which is a crazy word, who were resistant to the actual science being done because of their fear, like he said, that it would confirm the Christian faith or something like that. Even though, like you said, there's many ways to hold the scientific view of the Big Bang and also say it doesn't confirm the Christian faith, because you could just say, oh, it's a 50-50 shot, so they happen to get that one right or whatever.
I guess I just find it weird. First of all, the way you use scientism, it seems to be just people who use science in a way you don't.
No, people who
deny science,
deny science, but treat it as a religion, essentially. Treat it as a dogma.
But also, like, first of all, I need to know how many of these people there were. Like that's the first thing. Second, I need to know how big, like how effective this quote unquote, if it was a movement, was.
No, it's not a movement. It's an informal.
No,
thing.
I meant within. I meant within like this instant, because like.
Oh, I think you said it was a Nature magazine article, which would be pretty bad. Nature is a very esteemed scientific journal.
But at that point,
it's the highest.
But at that point, yeah, but they're talking about it in Nature magazine because it's already released. So like it's like if I go on a news section and I'm like, I thought about robbing a bank. But I never did it. Like,
Yeah. And then
It's like,
nature,
well-
nature was like, this is science, and then put it in their journal. That's
no,
what it's
no,
like.
no. He's saying that. Well, so I assume what you're saying is that this guy went on Nature and was like, this had implications for Christianity and like the Abrahamic religions. So we thought about like what effects this would have.
No. John Lennox was quoting one of his colleagues from the 60s when they were discovering the Big Bang.
Oh,
who
he's
wrote,
quoting someone while in Nature. Okay, that's the
so
thing I was confused by.
the colleague wrote an article in Nature about the Big Bang and said we should be careful to accept this for the reason that it would confirm the Christian faith. And so that is what scientism is.
I think that's fine.
That's fine. It's just not science. It's just
No,
religion.
hold on. So
it's just...
you're right. Well, no, it's not religion. It's we should be careful about this idea because of the effect that it will have.
Sure. Yeah, you can do that, but again, it's not science.
Yeah, that's not science. Yeah, it has nothing to do with science. It's a.
So why isn't it a science journal?
It's not creating. Okay, first of all, not everything in a science journal is science. You investigate scientists and you get their opinions.
Should be. It
shouldn't be.
An academic journal like Nature, absolutely every single article.
First of all, Nature isn't only an academic. Nature isn't only an academic journal.
Okay.
It's not like you interview scientists, you get their opinions on certain things, and if they give their opinions that aren't necessarily
that could have
science,
been the case. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, that aren't necessarily science, then fine, whatever. It's like oh, well, everything in an interview about a movie should only be about that movie. It's like, yeah, right. But I want to know what The Rock's opinion is on this. Like,
yeah, sure, I get you.
Yeah, I don't think that they're necessarily making a scientific.
But why would you wait? Why? But if you're really a scientist, really, and I'm just saying, I'm not saying he must speak only all scientists must only speak science. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if you are a scientist and that's what you've dedicated your life to, isn't science being open to the conclusions drawn by your experiments, formed by your hypotheses? So if
I don't think that he gives a fuck if God exists, to be honest. At least I wouldn't. I'd say the same thing, but I'd say it in the vein of like extremists. Because, like, for instance, if you gave some huge credence that like some religion that was like potentially dangerous, I'm not saying that Christianity necessarily is, but I think that this person probably thinks that religion is bad. No doubt.
Yeah, well, whoever wrote that, probably thought religion was bad.
Yeah. And so, like, if that's your view, which again isn't a scientific view, I think that he's right to be like, we need to make sure that this is 100% accurate before accepting it.
Sure.
Because it could have effects that we don't want. I think that's fine. I don't think that that's like scientism. I don't think that he's like denying any science in order to push an agenda. I think he's
it's just closed-minded, because if the evidence,
it's more closed-minded than just accepting it. Sure.
Yeah, because I think a real scientist. I mean, I don't even know who this guy is. We're gonna replay the last minute because David just joined, and so you have some context and stuff. But and David says the journal Nature has opinion articles too. That's great. I'm just saying on the front of being a scientist, you don't form conclusions first and then fit the observations to your conclusions. You make a hypothesis, you perform the experiment, you carry out your observations, and then you conform the conclusion to the experiment. So if the experiment is the Big Bang or whatever, figuring out if there's a beginning of space and time, there's no sense in which you should cut yourself off from the possibility that the Genesis account is correct, just simply for the reason, oh, well, Christians might be right because of that. Well, yeah, that's one of the actual possibilities.
But he didn't say let's not accept it because it's in line with Christianity. He said let's be careful about it because of the sociological impact.
Well, let's actually rewind, and because now I'm forgetting even what was said. So let's rewind a little bit and see what actually was said about that.
So, still lecturing, he'd put on his hat.
So this is the CS.
He's Irish.
Yeah, he is Irish. He is Irish. Yeah.
60s in Cambridge, when evidence of a beginning to space-time began to come in. It was seriously resisted by the scientific establishment. The then editor of Nature, Sir John Maddox, said, we cannot go down this road of believing that there was a beginning because it will give too much leverage to people who believe the Bible.
Oh,
other
he
words-
said fucking
so-
cannot. Yeah, that shit's
Yeah, he
fucked,
said
yeah.
cannot. Yeah, and but I'll also take my slap on the chin. It wasn't a scientific article. It was just that guy's opinion. So I'll give you that for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
But
That guy- no,
it's
that
a
guy-
bad
that guy
take
is
to
like,
have as a scientist. It's a bad take to have.
I mean, I don't even know if necessarily that guy was a scientist. I need to know his credentials. He probably was. He probably was.
We
I'm
could
just
look
saying,
him up.
like,
I mean, John Maddox, Nature. Sir John Royden Maddox, Welsh theoretical chemist, physicist, and science writer, editor of Nature for 22 years from
chemist
66.
and a scientist?
Yeah.
Or sorry, is it chemist and a
and
physicist?
a physicist.
Jesus.
Yeah. Wow.
That's like fucking two PhDs.
That's the whole.
Jesus.
Yeah, for real. From 66 to 73, and from 80 to 95, he was the editor of Nature. That's a long time, in two different sort of eras. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I guess I would just prefer a more rigorous definition of scientism.
Sure. I mean, I can work on that because it's sort of something I might make it up. I've heard this kind of like idea floating around. I've heard different words used
heard
to
it from the
describe
Discovery
that
Institute.
same thing. Yeah, and I don't even know I don't know what the Discovery Institute is other than what you've mentioned about them. So
You should 100%
clear-
actually investigate the Discovery
Yeah,
Institute
sure.
because I feel like you'd hate them.
I remember one guy that I really like you accused of being in the Discovery Institute, and so now I
it?
really now there's a I can't remember who it was, or like we were watching an interview, something on YouTube, and it was
Oh, I said he was really related to the Discovery Institute.
yeah,
I
when
don't
they were
think we've
doing
ever
his
watched
intro,
anyone-
it's like he wrote his PhD on this, and he works at this college, and
Oh, it
he's
was the,
a founding member of the Discovery Institute, and then it was suddenly like we can't
I know
watch
what
this
it
video
was.
anymore.
No,
You know.
I know what it was. It was
Yeah.
that he was taking quotes from the book Darwin's Doubt, which is a Discovery Institute.
Oh, okay, yeah, Darwin's doubt. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, I mean, I'll look into it more. Again, it's like if it's a bunch of fundamentalist, whatever, flat earther stuff, I'm not that interested. But if it is,
I'll put it to you like this:
nuanced,
it's
then-
like it's not flat earthers or anything, but
Uh-huh.
it is like a theological movement to bring like religion back into science class. Like I'm not talking like they're trying to bring creationism straight into science.
I would say just make science. Like just make it open to all the possible conclusions. One of which being religion. That's all I would say.
Right, but that's the thing is that like none of their stuff has basis. They just like, hey, you should like accept our beliefs, dude.
Right.
And like key he's like there are problems with evolution, so like put our stuff in science class. It's like that's not how that works.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Again, I mean, that'd be cool to check out. To David, it sounds like he's just stating opinion. Totally agree with you that he's stating opinion. I'm saying that is it. The opinion itself is anti-scientific. So that's all I'm saying.
See,
It's just
I
a
guess
condemnation
scientism
of
isn't-
the type of person that closes their mind to the genuine conclusions of God as a possibility. I'm not saying like you go into it presuming God exists when you do science, but you also just don't go into it presuming he doesn't. So if you find something that lends itself to him existing, you have to present that as an actual option when you're doing science.
Well, I mean, first of all, you don't have to present it as an option because that's demonstrated to be a possibility. But second of all, you don't have to disagree with the actual conclusion that like a beginning existed, right? Which I disagree with him on. But I will say that like, the idea that like a scientist may be like, we need to be careful about accepting this so readily because it has implications.
Yeah,
I'm
that
perfectly
would
fine
be
with.
better. That's how you would have put it. He put it differently, but that's fair.
Yeah, like for instance, if there's some kind of a extremist group that could benefit or be bolstered by a scientific fact, I definitely wouldn't be so really ready to put it out there, right? It might be true. I might accept that in my brain, right? I'd be like, this is true, but like,
Yeah.
I'd be careful about it.
Totally. Makes sense. David says, what makes science open to religion? Science is open to anyone. No, I totally agree. I mean, actually, a surprising number of scientists are religious. So there's that, not just in history, but
Right, but they don't bring
even
their
now.
fucking, religion into the lab.
But yeah, I'm just saying, like, we're addressing sort of a singular quote that I think sums up, and maybe I'm bullshitting, but I don't think I am, but that I think sums up a particular ethos of any conclusion to a hypothesis is accurate so long as it has no supernatural sort of implication.
Well, I mean, that's because science works on methodological naturalism. I don't think we need to be careful at all in this particular thing, to be very clear. Like, I'm okay with the Big Bang being a thing because it doesn't confirm God in any way.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know that there's other ways to resist that God would be
There's
but
no
you
other
do
ways,
have
it's just- this
problems.
doesn't confirm
It takes out 50%. If the Big Bang actually was the beginning of space and time, and again, I don't have to say that even if there was something before the Big Bang, there isn't a true beginning of whatever was before that. Yada yada yada, whatever. But it takes out
But it's
that
also
whole
like-
infinite multiverse, infinite regressive universe thing, which
it takes
is
out
the
infinite
only
regressive
answer
universe.
to a lot of atheistic claims about.
Well, no, because it takes out infinite universe, but it doesn't take out infinite cosmos or anything before the Big Bang. We have no idea. We have no way to investigate. So, like,
Yeah,
it
and
doesn't
I would
do
just say
anything.
philosophically, well, there's just is not an infinite regress. That just has its own problems. So
We do
again,
need to get into that because we got into that last time, and I still don't understand the problem with infinite regress. But go on.
I think I said it last time, but if it didn't stick, it probably won't stick again. But the simplest way I can possibly formulate it is imagine trying to jump out of a hole that has no bottom.
Yeah, I don't get that comparison.
Yeah, because it makes
I'm
no
still traveling
sense.
in the hole.
But that's what an
No, I
infinite
don't get how it
regress is.
compares.
Because that
No,
would jumping out of a hole that is infinitely deep is the same thing as finding yourself in this point in time where we are right now, having
No, 'cause
jumped
I can
out
still
of an
travel
infinitely
through the
deep hole. How? What do you jump off of?
When you jump off of, I'm just
Yeah.
saying we're going through it.
Well,
I don't know how I got how I started here. I just know that I'm here.
Right. So I guess this would go to, but like you said, started here, I'm here. All these things imply like beginnings, ends, whatever. But
No, it doesn't.
an infinite regress, there is no beginning. And if it's a loop, that's even more problematic because if it's actually a loop, then you have something. So you have like, say your fake first cause, like your illusory first cause or whatever, and
I mean,
then
if you have a
all
problem
the
with eternity, I think that an eternal
Okay.
loop doesn't cause any problem either.
No, it definitely does because if it's actually a loop and it's not like so infinite past and
Do you believe
future.
God is eternal?
Yes, in like a sort of
Okay.
static sense or something like that. But
Okay. Why can't a loop be any different?
I'll show you exactly why. Because if there's this illusory like first cause, just call it that, whatever cause at this point in the circle, and then you go around doing all the effects and all the causes. Eventually, you get to an effect of that cause that causes the first cause.
Yeah, but
So
you've
it
already,
makes no
you've already
sense.
denied you already denied the situation of the loop.
What do you mean?
It's a loop. Doesn't have a beginning. You've already been like, well, if there is a first.
Okay,
there's
fine.
not.
But I said illusory beginning. I said fake beginning because you're right. It wouldn't have a beginning, which also, whatever. Forget that. Pick any point
Can't
on the
forget it,
circle.
that's part of it.
Pick any point on the circle. Every cause is its own effect. Every effect is its own cause. It's totally nonsensical. Explain to me how
but
that
why?
how that possibly could work.
I couldn't explain to you how cause and effect works.
Right. Yeah, fair enough. So, it's just
Like, if I can't
completely
explain to you how it does
unintuitive.
work, no, it's unintuitive because we live in this universe. And we live by cause and effect, and we all know that like those effects need to have cause and.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah,
like-
you're right.
but, like,
I'm sorry.
again,
I should have been
we're
more
trying to-
clear. Because we live in this universe, it's unintuitive. Okay, that's because I live in this
Right.
universe, my name is Reese or whatever. Like this is all we got.
Well,
so we
yeah,
got to
I mean,
do our
but-
best with our mental faculties here, and the best of
Yeah,
our
it's
mental
like we can't
faculties
even- we can't
cannot
even get,
possibly conceptualize that. What
Right,
we
but our
can
minds were
conceptualize
built
is an
to do that.
immaterial, static infinity that creates something
okay,
finite
first of all,
within
we
it.
can't. First of all, we can't conceptualize that.
Well, not in its fullness, but I mean,
Yeah, exactly. We can't.
I have
we
that
can't do
image
that
pretty
same thing.
simply.
But we
I can
can't do
actually
that in
draw it.
Ouroboros either.
I can draw it.
I can
We
draw
can
an
go-
Ouroboros.
we could go right
there
back
you go.
to
Infinite
paint.
loop.
You can draw.
You can draw
yeah,
a
but
circle. There you go. Infinite loop.
Can you draw an infinite? I guess any circle.
Circle. Yeah.
Except
draw a
there's no
line that's
causal
beginning and an
connection. There's
end.
no causal connection between any point on the circular line.
Exactly. So I can.
But there
conceptualize
are
what we're talking
causal
about.
connections in space and time, and we know that. Like we must know that. That's one of the few
Why can't there be
things.
causal connections within a loop?
Well, there just aren't. Like so if I draw this circle,
There aren't.
what is causal? What causally makes this point create that point?
The previous point.
No, I drew it like this. I drew it instantly.
Drew what?
The circle. Oh, I don't know if you can see my paints on
Oh,
Discord.
your paint open.
Let me change the entire screen here. Okay, so like what is the causal relationship between this point here and this point here? There is none because I drew a circle. It's not a causal entity. But if you're talking about time, these are all causal relationships. So this point causes this point, which causes this point, which causes this point, which causes this point. And then you get back to a point that caused the point that caused it. I mean, that makes no sense.
What's the problem with that?
How did it get there? I think this would even be a
proof
for God if this
were, got there because of the point.
True. Yeah, okay, how did this point get here if it was caused by this one, which hasn't been created yet, when this one caused this one, this one, this one, this one? Oh, wait, but it was created? Wait, so it was created, but it wasn't created? So, do you see
what I mean? An answer, or?
Sure, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, it's already created.
What do you mean? Oh, things are just like statically in time, like static. Yeah. Well, I guess if you don't believe
we view time as a linear thing, but if we view time as a linear thing, that's how we experience time.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how time exists.
Wait, you sure about that?
Yeah.
I thought you didn't believe in possible universes and
I don't believe in possibility. In fact, the idea of a static time is actually the opposite of that.
The opposite. Okay, I understand. So you believe in a static looping time?
No, I don't believe in that. I said it's possible.
Oh, it's just a possibility. Okay.
Well, it's not a possibility. It's just like not logically impossible. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think there's a world where this happens.
Yeah, I'm gonna need something else to convince me that it's logical.
I mean, I
for
probably
a
won't
cause
convince you of it.
To cause its own cause. You know what I mean?
Well, for instance, right? Like,
yeah.
let's say the time that it takes collapses, right? Like, let's say that once we get back to that, around to that, the fucking universe freaks the fuck out, and it's just like, and it just collapses in on itself.
Then that would be linear. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, just imagine that for a second.
Yeah. Sure.
No, it wouldn't be linear. It would hit the last point, and then it would freak the fuck out. So it wouldn't be a circle, but then when it meets the end itself.
So it'd be something like. Oh, that's. I'm still in circle mode. It'd be something like.
Still be a circle.
Right. Wait, like something like this? Like an unconnected circle?
No, it would be a connected circle. It's just the minute that it connects, it fucking just disintegrates, right? But
I thought it was a static circle, so it's disintegrating all the time because it's always connecting.
I'm talking about in the line of cause and effect. I'm not saying the circle doesn't exist.
Okay.
So we have the circle, and then all of a sudden, it meets at the end in the cause and effect chain.
Okay.
Then you have the situation where the fucking universe just freaks the fuck out.
So there's like wait, just to be something clear. So there's a fake, like, illusory beginning here, and we call that like the Big Bang, right?
Sure.
And then you go all the way around.
Let's call that both of the heat death of the universe and the Big Bang.
Okay, so those are the same. So that's like the same moment or something in time.
It could be a cyclical time. Yeah. Because in the individual like moment that happens,
and
there's no laws.
The question, okay, fair enough.
Then it can start again. And
so it's possible for it to start again exactly the same.
I'm not saying it's necessarily possible, but it definitely isn't unintuitive. Like, it definitely has like a thing where it's like.
Well, it's pretty unintuitive because then I would just simply ask the question:
no laws.
How did this entity, this self-existence looping circle get here?
Because something needs to exist.
Right. So what created it? Like, so what something existed?
Something
for
needs
this
to exist.
Okay, so then that would be an argument for theism.
No, it wouldn't. Something needs to exist. That doesn't need to be God.
Something outside of this time loop needs to exist for this to be possible.
Not outside of it.
Well, how did it get here?
Look at the dot.
It just is. So it's a brute fact that this universe is here. So now you're saying the universe could be a brute. I'm not saying you're saying this or you believe this, but that it's possible for the universe itself to be a brute fact.
We've had this conversation before. Existence is a brute fact. Well, I mean, you don't think that existence is a brute fact, but I certainly don't. Well, no, you do think existence is a brute fact because you think God exists.
Not as a brute fact, but by
God exists as a brute fact, right?
No, I don't think so. A brute fact means something that is. He justifies himself.
Everything else.
He is the ultimate justification, I would say, including the justification for his own existence. So maybe we could.
In the same way that I view the logical absolutes. Yeah.
I guess.
Does he need anything else dependent for his existence? if nobody's a
No,
brute fact.
but the logical absolutes, I think, do. But whatever. I mean, I know you don't. That's fine. That you don't believe that. But yeah, I would say God is the only thing that doesn't rely on anything
Yeah, so he's a
external.
brute fact, and he exists. Therefore, I think you would say that existence is his most base thing, right?
No, I couldn't possibly say what his most. I couldn't say anything about his
Whatever.
essence.
Existence as a part of his essence, so existence is a brute fact, along with the rest of him.
I would just say I don't know if I can actually say anything more than just he is. He is that he is. That's pretty much all I can say about it. Which is what's said in the Bible. So I think fair enough.
And therefore, that's the initial point, and then it collapses. Nothing can't exist, therefore it's created again, etc., etc. This doesn't seem logically impossible or unintuitive. Like, it's literally something needs to exist. So the minute that it has to stop existing because it's looping.
But you admit that the Big Bang causes the heat death of the universe, no? In this, as one of its downstream effects. As one of the downstream effects, the Big Bang causes the heat death of the universe, right?
I don't know which one starts. Again, I don't even know if the linear.
Sure. Well, just then go back one point. Say the heat death of the universe causes the Big Bang, right?
Point.
But they are the same thing, right? So a thing causes itself.
They're not the same thing. First of all, they're different.
On this circle, they are, because that's like you said, it's the meeting point.
They're different terms.
Different terms for the same thing.
Because the Big Bang, at that moment, that is a thing, has time.
Yep.
The same thing with the heat death of the universe. When it dies, that's a temporal statement. We're talking about the instant that they happen.
Yeah.
At that point where there is no rules.
Right. Okay.
All of a sudden, everything has to exist because nothing can't exist. There you go. Like, I don't see how this is unintuitive.
That doesn't even make sense. You just said everything has to exist because nothing can exist. There you go. As if that makes that. I'm sorry. I should be nice. I should be kinder. What do you? Can you unpack that? What does that mean?
We've unpacked it before, and it's weird because you've agreed with it every time I've said it. Like, by the definition of nothing,
yeah, something
has to exist because nothing cannot exist.
Okay, I mean I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
But why does that something? Wait, just because something has to exist, why does that something have to be the identical, or not have to be, but why could that something?
I'm just saying that.
Why could? How could logically it possibly be its own creator? You see what I mean?
Why does, again, you're viewing it like a linear view of time. Why does it have to be created? It's the nothing can't exist. Why does it have to be created? There's like
I'm not even talking about nothing. I don't even know how nothing is coming into this conversation. I'm saying there's a cause, or there's a point on the circle. Every point after that point is causally connected to the initial point, right? Whichever one you choose. You can choose. And the other weird thing about this circle is that every point is completely identical. Like, there actually is no starting.
Not identical,
not identical, but every point is equally the beginning of the universe and the end of the universe, which is unintuitive, but fair enough. Well, yeah, because it's a circle. So what's special about
things are happening?
Yeah, sure, different things are happening, but that doesn't say anything about whether they're the beginning or the end, because it's a static circle. So this Big Bang heat death universe.
Is that also a part of the time where it's the heat death of the universe? No, the heat death of the universe happens for specific reasons.
The heat death of the universe and the Big Bang are just names that you're giving to an arbitrary point on the circle.
They're events. No, they're events.
Yeah, sure, events that you're giving arbitrarily to a point on.
They're not arbitrary. They happen.
Okay, they happen. That doesn't make them not arbitrary.
Yes, it does, because they are specific. There are moments when they happen. They're specific. It's not the same as Wednesday. Unless it happens on a Wednesday.
I think you're kind of missing the point here. If there is a static circular universe like this, if time is a static circular loop like this, what's the beginning? I'll delete all my. What's the beginning of the circle?
Before.
Why is that one the beginning? The heat death / Big Bang.
Described before, the heat death and yeah.
But why?
Because that's what we've made them.
Well, they're just another arbitrary point. All right, I'll stop using the word arbitrary. Just because there happens to be a big explosion at one of these points along the circle, it doesn't make it the beginning or the end, because it's a circle. There is no beginning or end.
You're getting it. You're getting it. It could be a cosmos.
Yes.
You're getting it.
Yeah, I'm getting it, but you're not getting it. So explain this to me. So what is the beginning and end on this static circular thing.
Whatever those events are, when they
It's
happen.
it's arbitrary, right? It's whatever you choose. It could be
We're gonna stop
Wednesday,
using that word,
May
but-
21st, 2025 is the beginning, and Tuesday,
I feel
May
like you're just
20th,
saying that.
2025 is
Why?
the end. Well, because that's what's ridiculous about this. That's not how it's
Yeah,
not
but you're just saying
ridiculous,
it.
but it's completely unintuitive. It's not at
But
all
again,
how
you're
we
just
perceive.
saying that that's the case. You're just saying that that's the case. Why is that the case?
Because it's a circle, so there is no beginning or end.
Yes, brother, a circle is a diagram. If we make a diagram, then you're just like, well, that point on the left-hand side is arbitrary. It's like, yes,
Yes,
because
indeed.
we have to measure it.
Indeed. But I actually happen to think that the Big Bang does represent a beginning to the universe, but you can't possibly say that if there's a static circular universe.
Yeah, I can.
How?
Because
How?
okay, let's take a movie, for example, right?
Sure.
Let's loop the movie.
Okay.
Does the movie have a beginning?
No. If you're looping it infinitely and
What
it's
are
static,
you talking about?
of course it doesn't.
The movie
What are you
has a
talking
specific
about?
event that happens, the thing that shows on the screen that is the beginning of the narrative.
You could call it the beginning, but it's totally arbitrary.
Just because it loops doesn't mean that. You're just saying that. You're just saying those words over and over again. hoping that
I
they'll
think
get
we're
through, but
talking
it
past
doesn't
each
mean
other.
anything.
Okay. David Palermo, we're definitely talking past each other, so that's okay. We'll just we'll let the chat discern what they think about this. We don't know how it got here. Not knowing doesn't mean God. The universe creates itself. New theory says Big Bang never happened. Can I paste a link here? You can try. I'm not sure if YouTube's going to let external links, but
I also
definitely
want to
give it a
clarify.
shot.
I'm not saying that this is what happened. I'm just saying
I
that
know, you're
this
just-
isn't exactly not a possibility. Like no one's like being like this is impossible, and I'm saying that this is like against the guy who said we can't tell people this because it proves God. It's like no, it doesn't. Like this is easily as viable as fucking God.
Okay, fair enough. Agree to disagree that this is at all viable,
Scientifically,
but maybe scientifically, I guess. Well, not scientifically at all, because you simply
no,
could not prove
absolutely
this at all
Okay,
scientifically.
there you go. There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
It's as valuable as God.
Well, God, you can, but anyway, forget it.
Really, is there a universal constant for God, or is there a mathematical constant for God? I don't remember seeing.
Is that what God is? Is that what would prove God?
Yeah, that would prove God.
Okay, fair. I think
If we
that's.
discovered a mathematical
I
formula
guess
for
you
God,
have some
that
kind
would be
of
pretty fucking good
strange
evidence.
Pythagorean idea of what God is. Like he is a number. or something.
Pythagorean.
Yeah, just 'cause Pythagoras was obsessed with like numbers being
I'm not saying
divine
he
and like the
is a
divinity of
number.
numbers. Well, that's what. How would you? You said the only way to prove God.
I'm saying if you could
would be
mathematically
if he
prove
had
God,
a
that would be
constant.
evidence.
Okay.
Again,
Fair
I
enough.
feel like
Fair
you're
enough.
just sticking and hearing things. I'm not saying like I'm saying if there was mathematical proof of God, that'd be very good fucking evidence. No,
Yeah, that would be good evidence. But is that the
There you
only way
go.
you can get evidence? Obviously not.
I didn't say
So-
it was.
Right. So, but you won't accept the other evidences, right? Or no?
What other evidences?
Well, the resurrection of Christ, the historical testimony
not
of the
scientific.
martyrs. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So you'd only accept evidences that are strictly empirical scientific, right?
No, we were talking about science.
Yeah, I'm talking about science too. I said, what about the resurrection of Christ? You said that's not scientific. So
It's not scientific. We
What
were
am I
talking about
supposed to
science. If you're
take
talking about
from
other
that?
evidence that I would accept, then yeah, we can talk about that. But we were talking about
yeah,
science.
yeah. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. So, oh right, I guess I did ask.
What kind
like,
of ham
what,
sandwiches
what
do you like? I
scientific-
like cheese.
Yeah. There's no scientific proof for that. No, I'm kidding.
There's no ham
Okay.
sandwich proof for that.
Yeah, exactly. Did the universe really start with the Big Bang? Dr. Richard Liu thinks otherwise. In this episode, we explore the
The
radical
universe,
theory of
maybe.
transient temporal singularities, bursts that could replace dark matter, dark energy, and even the Big Bang itself. Get ready
What
to
date?
rethink the universe. I mean, yeah, fair enough.
What date was that released on? Because we have had a lot of breakthroughs on the expansive dark matter and the research there.
Yeah, I know nothing about that. I'm not personally a physicist or a scientist at all, but happy to entertain any of those theories and check it out. But importantly, to David, and we don't have to get all the way back into it, but even if the Big Bang is not the beginning of the universe, that doesn't say there isn't a beginning, and I think it makes more sense for there to be a beginning. Even, obviously, my religious faith and my belief is that there obviously is one.
I hate the
because of
word universe
Genesis.
because when we're talking about the beginning of the universe, what we really mean for when we're talking about religion is the beginning of the cosmos. Everything. Literally creation.
No.
Like, that's
No,
what
no,
we're
no.
talking about.
Oh, okay, fair enough. But
Like that's
universe,
what cosmos means. Cosmos means anything that might be outside the universe as well.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I believe in the beginning of the creation, the cosmos, anything that outside of the universe. Yeah, agreed.
Like for instance, you'd believe
another way to say
the
that
cosmos would
how about
include angels.
how about this? I just made this up. The true universe.
No,
Retarded.
No.
The true universe, the true oneness of all creation.
No,
That's
just
what we're
let's
talking
just
about.
say existence. That's why I use the word existence, because cosmos people get people thinking about the stars. It's like, no, I'm talking about like things that might exist outside of the universe. For instance, you would believe in the cosmos because you believe angels were created before the universe was created.
Yeah.
Right? Those are in the cosmos, but they're not in creation. Or not creation.
Yeah. And the fundamental philosophical reason I don't believe that there's a circular looping universe, and I'm just going to leave it at this, and I'll let Infamous say your piece about why you think there could be real quick. But I'm just going to leave it at the fact I don't believe, so it is a statement of faith, that an effect of a cause can then cause that cause. And that's the implication of a looping circular universe. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Infamous, feel free to have the last word or refute that or anything you want to say on that, but I'm going to leave it there.
No, you're saying that you don't have any reason to believe that. That's my point of the whole argument, is that we have no reason to believe in God.
Okay. But what is your...
That's why I think they're
do
just as
you have
valid.
a reason to believe in that or no?
No, I never said I did. If I did, I would believe it.
Okay, so you're just... Okay, I get you. Okay,
I'm saying
cool.
it's just as valid as God, in the same way that, like, this guy is being like, we should be very careful. I'm like, well, should we? Because it doesn't exclude this fucking crazy possibility.
Okay. Cool. But also to be clear, the reason I believe in God is not primarily philosophical, but that's okay. Or like evident. I mean,
I should probably get the chat up because
there is evidence for that, but the evidence I take is that I believe in historical evidence and the testimony of the gospel writers and Paul and yada yada yada. So, and I believe that I'm convinced by the prophetic revelation throughout the Old Testament depicting specific events in history that actually did historically happen that people thousands of years couldn't have known about except by something else going on. I'll just leave it at that. How about that? And then add that in with all the other stuff I believe, that Jesus rose from the dead and the gospel writers are genuine and yada, yada, yada. And my personal experience, that's when I come to the fullness of proudly proclaiming to be a Christian and wanting to go to church and all these things that we get now. So, we can... David says, I agree. I also have no reason, no convincing evidence to think that there is a God, and that's totally fine. Do you think there's no evidence, or you just aren't convinced by the evidence, David? And maybe I can pose that.
I think you'd have to agree that there's anecdotal evidence, but
or historical evidence. You could say historical evidence.
It depends on how you define historical evidence.
I mean, the way that I define it as history. I don't know, like the way anybody would define it.
That was a great.
I know. But I'm saying the historical evidence for Jesus is not distinct from any other historical evidence. It's actually more rigorous. Usually,
I would
people
agree.
are actively trying to disprove it, and people are actively trying to prove it as well.
I don't think it's
fine.
more
Well,
rigorous.
at least
we'll
agree that it meets the standard for typical historical evidence, such that if you want to deny that Jesus existed, you would also have to deny that other major figures in history did not exist. Like,
now, is there great historical evidence that he rose from the dead and turned water to wine? Fuck no.
I think so. Well, turn water to wine. You just take that on faith. But the raising from the dead
claim like that in
the
all of
sign.
history. Think of another claim like that in all of history. And think
Yeah,
if there's
they're
any
all
kind of
mythical.
evidence that would prove that.
Well, yeah, if there was another claim in history and there was historical evidence to prove that, then I would at least be tempted to believe that claim.
What would the evidence for Muhammad flying to heaven on a winged horse look like? Because I tell you one thing, they've got the exact same amount of evidence as you do for believing in God.
No, actually not true at all. No, not
They've
true.
got the exact same amount of evidence and doctrine and reports. They actually think to have better documentation than you do. Then
I'd be surprised.
Yeah,
maybe they claim that. I'd be surprised if they actually had that, but that's fine.
They're gonna. I'm talking about specific events. I'm talking about.
Yeah. Okay, so let's okay. We can do this. This is a good experience. I absolutely reject the idea that there's the same amount of evidence for Muhammad flying to heaven on a winged horse as there is for the empty tomb implying the resurrection of Jesus Christ.
Not the empty tomb. Not the empty tomb.
Okay, so sorry, I should be more clear. The empty tomb plus and just hear me out while I finish this.
You're changing it.
No, I'm not. I'm going to say the exact same.
Of Jesus Christ.
I am leading to the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and I'm giving you the 4 pillars of evidence that make me believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ, which are the principle of embarrassment, the way it's described, the tomb being genuinely empty, the horrific deaths of the martyrs, their conviction that it was empty, and we can package that within that their genuine first century Jewish belief in what a Messiah should and would look like, and then radically changing their doctrine, their teaching, becoming, they didn't think of it this way, but a whole new religion, despite being devout first century Jews. And then there's one more, but I'm forgetting it. But that'll be enough for now. There is another one that I'm forgetting. But so those are the evidences. Why? And the strongest one to me is the testimony of the martyrs, to be honest. It makes...
Really? That's the strongest one for you? That's the weakest one for me.
Fair enough. I mean, people can choose different ones. But to me, it makes absolutely no sense why strict monotheistic first century Jews, very strict, would proclaim a man, a countryman, a person that they knew, to be the risen Christ and to be God. That is... Unless they had seen something incredible, unless they had witnessed something that would radically change their worldview. To me, that's pretty convincing.
Why would a Jew start worshiping a bronze bull? They seemed pretty fucking gullible.
What? Okay, fair enough. If your thing is just like they were gullible, then fair enough. That's fine.
They were, dude.
But gullible to what? Okay, gullible to what? So who tricked
Moses
them?
Was?
Wait, so who? Wait, no, that's a good question. Okay, so they're gullible. So who tricked them?
The person in question.
Jesus? You mean after he rose from the dead? Like, what are you talking about?
Okay, brother. Let's.
No. Wait, listen, because Jesus never said, "I'm gonna die and then I'm gonna rise again." He said it cryptically, that in ways they did not understand. Like, the only sign I'll give this generation is the sign of Jonah, and then people are scratching their heads.
Didn't say anything.
Well, but
they still believed in
the
that
other worshippers of the bull did. They said, "Oh, well, you worship Baal." So the people that were tricked into worshiping the bull were the Jews that were listening to the Baal worshippers. There are no Christians yet. How do these people become Christians? Unless Christ told them.
It's just interpretations of the Messiah. That's it. It's just an interpretation.
But this is not a valid interpretation, clearly, because even today.
I mean, I think the Jews think that, but you think that.
Well, I think it is very obvious that it is. But how do they come to that? How do they?
So I have a question. Do you think that Jesus fulfilled the messianic prophecy?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's a valid interpretation to believe, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. Only if he rose from the dead, though. So if they didn't think he rose from the dead, i.e., so you agree that they couldn't. I'm not saying that
they didn't believe that. They absolutely believed that if it happened.
So how? So why?
Do you think that the people who rammed planes
your
into
view
the
that their claims...
9/11, brother, I haven't even fucking finished.
Okay, all right, continue.
Do you think the people who rammed planes into buildings in 9/11 believed what they thought?
Yeah.
Okay. Did that make them right?
No.
There you go.
What? How is that relevant?
Brother, if you can't connect the dots, I can't help you.
Okay. Is it your view that they were hallucinating the images of Christ they had? That they had been tricked by someone else?
They had.
Let me tell you the difference. Let me tell you why that example is not at all relevant. Because they are Muslims. Islam has been around for 700 years. Christianity does not exist yet. They created. So who tricked them? Who convinced them?
What are you talking about? I'm talking about the conviction of their beliefs. I don't care about whether or not they believed it or not. If they believed it, that's fine. The example is to prove that belief doesn't mean belief and conviction doesn't mean true. That's the point of the example.
No, I agree that belief and conviction doesn't mean true, but it does in light of other elements like the fierce persecution that they would face, like the fact that you'd get zero benefit out of believing this thing, which is hard to believe, impossible to believe, especially for a monotheistic.
Gives you zero shit. Yeah.
What's that?
They were going to die.
Are you talking about the martyrs now or the Muslims?
Yeah, no, I'm talking about both of them. They're both going to die.
Okay.
Like, so, like this is the thing, is that like they were made to believe certain things, and the convictions of these like Jews at the time. Well, I mean, I guess they were the first Christians, but like the convictions of these Christians doesn't in any way speak to the truth of their thing, even their previous things, even the things they believed previously. Because guess what? The people there apparently just started fucking believing in random shit.
Okay,
Like,
so that's your view
you know,
of how
you
people
know,
like that. They're so gullible and
do you think
naive
do you
that they
think
just
that, do you think that
believe.
Jesus do you
How
think
did
that
they
Jesus
create?
said that
Yeah,
he was
yeah.
the Son of
Go for
God?
it. Yes.
Do you think that Jesus said he was the Son of God? Okay.
Yes.
So you believe that Jesus goes around telling people these things, correct?
Very,
around
very
telling
cryptically.
people-
It's hard for, if you have no tradition, it's hard to even read that now when you read the Bible. So especially back then when there literally was no tradition,
Right.
no
They have no
concepts of
information
these.
about the they have no they have
I
less
think
than we
people
do
would
about
not be
Christendom, yeah.
expected to, especially what you see in the Talmud. Is like there's almost maybe I'll do some research on this, but
Either
it
way,
seems
you're
like
saying
there's
that this guy
absolutely
goes
no
around-
conception that the Messiah will die, especially
I'm not saying that.
without
I'm not
taking
saying that.
over Rome.
No, you've gone to a different point. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that
okay.
did he
What are you
did he
saying?
claim that he was in some way miraculous, in some way a prophet, in some way God?
Of course, yeah,
okay.
yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay, and it wasn't too complicated for the like people to understand that that's what he was saying. In fact, he was actually about to be fucking hanged and crucified for saying that shit.
The prophet and the miraculous part, people definitely got. Obviously, I mean that would have been the most
Okay,
obvious
cool.
thing. The God part was not clear until later.
That's fine. That's fine. I can just stick with the other ones. So
Yeah.
because I feel like that's enough of a reason to follow Jesus Christ, even if he never said he was God.
Sure, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So my thing now is, you said the reason that they worshipped the bull is because the Ballists were saying things about that and convincing.
Sure.
Jesus was
just some
doing
kind of
the
rebellion.
same thing.
Yeah, that's what the Jews would probably say.
Exactly.
Okay. So
So
then
these
what
motherfuckers were
exactly?
just gullible as shit. Like,
Wait,
that's
so-
exactly what they were.
So let
In
me
fact,
just
God even
ask
says
you.
that. Well, God doesn't say it. Moses says that. But Moses,
Yeah.
Moses had it so that it was written
No,
down.
I get that. So let me just ask you, because of this, so they're being tricked like the Baal worshippers or whatever, or they're gullible or they're naive or something like that.
I don't
So
even
let me just
necessarily
ask
think that they
you.
were tricked. I don't even necessarily think they were tricked. It could be literally all true, right? It could be all true. They're
Yeah.
still gullible as fuck.
Okay, fine. Yeah, they're gullible, and sometimes we call them the disciples, kind of funnily in the.
I'm gonna use that.
Because a lot of times they're kind of goofy, and they kind of don't get it a lot, which is important and interesting in its own right. But anyway,
Except
so
Doubting Thomas, he was a fucking
what is
Chad.
what is your opinion then about what they say about seeing the risen Christ? Is that either them tricking their followers? Is that them hallucinating their beloved prophet? Or is that, or I think those might be the only options? Unless you can think of a
I don't
third,
know.
or is it some other option? Like, but it is one of those things.
I'm not presenting another option. I just don't.
No,
believe
I'm
the
just
fact that he
curious.
fucking
Given
raised from the dead.
given the logic that you've given, fair enough. They're gullible, yada yada yada, whatever. What
Could
do
have
you
been
think?
anything, dude. Could have been.
What's your-
Could have been
what's your
literally just one of the. Could have been one of the. Could have been one random cunt that just looked like Jesus walking for all I fucking.
Okay.
Like still
That
more
would
believable than
actually
the fact
not.
that fucking.
That would not align with the accounts of them not recognizing Jesus for hours until after he revealed himself to them. So like what? So one of the most interesting accounts to me is when I wish I remember which two disciples, but two of the disciples are walking around. I think John and call it I don't know whoever John and Peter, and a stranger comes up to them, and he goes, "You guys look sad," and they're like, we had a rough, we had a rough week," and he goes like, "You shouldn't be sad." And they're like, "What?" And then this guy starts preaching the Old Testament to them, revealing the scripture in the Old Testament, which, like, whatever, predicted how the actual nature of the Messiah, that he would die and rise again, he'd be crushed and pierced and all yada yada yada, whatever. And then after this whole long conversation, the disciples were like, "Oh shit, that was Jesus." Right? Okay. So that's the story. Obviously, I majorly paraphrased it. So my question is, did they make that up to trick people, knowing that people would be like incredulous, or that they would be?
Do you think Jesus can take any form he wants?
Yes, of course. Well, I think Jesus purposely hid his, like,
I think
obviously
some
if he wanted to
random cunt-
reveal himself to them in his normal form, he would've.
I I think some random cunt with a bit of fucking know-how came up to him and they were like, maybe that was Jesus. I think that's so much more believable than thinking he rose from the dead.
Well, yeah, I know you do, because you don't. If you don't believe in miracles,
you're the
then
one that I was
fine.
talking about. You're
But
the one that's
imagine if
always
you'd
talking about. Hold on,
Yeah,
hold
sorry,
on. You're
sorry.
you're the one always talking about how like I'm saying shit that is unintuitive. You know what's unintuitive?
Mm-hmm.
Being like, oh shit, they saw Jesus raised from the dead after like a couple hours.
Okay,
Or
great. So now I'm just asking you,
these
if that's
cunts.
unintuitive, what is the more intuitive option? Did the disciples lie? Were they hallucinating? I guess those are the
I
only
think
two.
they
Or was it
misunderstood.
they were like so naive and so gullible they accidentally sort of started this massive
What do you mean? They believe.
religious
What do you mean?
reform?
They believe in a magic. First of all, a lot of religions actually like came out of misunderstandings. I think the Jews would actually believe that. I think you actually believe that, because
Well,
you
I'm
think
curious
that
what
that's
you
the
mean by that.
reason. Well, you think that that's the reason why Muslims worship Allah. Huge misunderstanding, right?
No, I think
People
that
are
was probably a
lying.
demon that influenced Muhammad.
Oh, you think okay? You think straight up it's like lies, okay?
Yeah, yeah. When you get into it, I
You
didn't
think that
used to think
ever-
that, but and I don't think Muslims as people. And
No,
I know a lot
that's
of
fine.
Muslims, but I'm just saying the doctrine and the theology has this dark twist that I
Do you
think
think that
probably.
misunderstandings can produce religions? Like, for instance,
Yeah,
the only reason that Jews
sure.
are still Jews is because of a misunderstanding, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Then all I'm saying is we have a lot of examples of religions being created under misunderstandings, and this book outlines the Jews as being able to misunderstand
Okay.
a lot of the shit
Yeah,
that
fair
happens.
enough. So your take is that and I'm just not, I'm not being critical of it. I'm just trying to get it
I
clear.
definitely don't think they'd be lying or like anything like that. I feel like a lot. Well, I mean, I think there could have been lies, right? I feel like if I said Judas lied about a few things, I feel like no one would ask me. But if I said John lied about a few things, I'd be lynched.
For them to be misunderstanding, they would have to be lying about a few things. Like, for instance, the fact that Jesus
No.
apparated into the. No, yes, absolutely. The fact that he apparated into the room and that Thomas felt his open wounds, that would have to be a lie if it's a misunderstanding.
No, it wouldn't have to be a lie.
Oh, okay. Well, no, explain that. I'm curious. How would that just be a simple misunderstanding?
Okay, I'm not saying that this happened. I'm just giving you an example of when this would
Sure.
be a misunderstanding.
Go for it. Yeah.
I have a hallucination. I have
Okay,
a
so
dream.
hallucination. Gotcha.
Brother, what did I just say? Well, like I said, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying
Oh, okay.
that this is an example of what you're asking for.
Yeah.
If I had a hallucination where this happened, or a dream where this happened, right?
Uh-huh.
Especially when we talk about like Chinese whispers, right? How this could be like. You know,
And
first of
did
all, I
all
don't
the
think
I'm
Bible-
sorry, just real quick, because he appeared to the 12 in the room when Thomas asked for this, right? So all 12 people had the same hallucination, or sort of one guy had it and just made up that the other 11 were there, or
I think the
how
second
are
option is
we-
probably better, but
that one guy had
there are
this
mass
hallucination.
hallucinations.
Okay, fair enough.
Like I think you would agree that like certain religions with even more not more, but like at least a little bit less or equal to the amount of documentation you have, you'd have to attribute some of the same claims to the same thing. Or you call them liars.
I'm not sure
Or
if
you
I would
call
have
them
to.
liars.
I'm not
Or
sure if
you
I'd
call
have
them
to
liars.
actually.
Or
Well,
you call them
because
liars.
I believe in God, I believe that God could work through, say, the Buddha to, do something. Like I think the Buddha could invoke either
like, do you
angelic
think
or
Buddhists are
demonic or
lying?
spiritual power. No, certainly not.
Okay, do you think they're misunderstood?
Yeah. Well,
There you go.
I guess, are they misunderstood? You mean, are they misunderstanding like the nature of reality? Certainly, they're missing the fullness of the nature of reality. I think that, but I think they actually have a pretty robust understanding of how suffering works. So they fully understand one limited part of the structure of reality, and I think they just sort of ignore the bigger question of how did it
You
get
just have
here.
to understand
But-
it from like my standpoint, right? You're saying this like supernatural outside of like the reasonable belief of evidence happens, right? When
Okay.
there's like an like I don't accept that this realm of magic exists.
I know.
So it's not.
That's
it's
why I'm
not gonna be an
trying to ask
acceptable-
you
So
why.
it's not going to be an acceptable answer to me. Any answer other than that, however improbable, is more likely than this magic realm.
Well, that's
that
not
you
very
have to prove
scientific.
that exists.
But maybe you're not trying to be
That's
scientific.
very.
But
That's very. First of all, that's very scientific because
Well,
I'm not
no,
gonna
we
use
already-
data that doesn't exist or hasn't been proven to be true.
That's
to
scientism.
conclude something.
that's
No,
scientism.
brother. I
Because
just described to you that I'm not going
you
to use
said
data that hasn't been. Brother, I'm not
Did you
going
not
to use
say?
data.
Did you not say no matter how whatever you know? Did you not say any conclusion that includes a supernatural element, no matter how whatever it is, I'm not going to accept? Did I mishear that? Or
No, you didn't. You know why that's not scientism?
why is that not scientism?
Because that realm hasn't been fucking proven to exist.
Well,
Why would
you're
I
just
take? Why would I
saying
take
that.
that? No, brother.
What do you think
Science
about
would
what do
prove.
you think about near-death
First of all, if
experiences?
science, brother, I think that they've been tested and that they're wrong.
Oh, really? Let's
Yeah,
see.
have you never heard about the experiments of near-death
Not the ones
experiences?
that disprove them, but I'm happy that we can watch a video about that.
Sure.
Because I've heard thousands and thousands of accounts, not personally,
Like they
but
literally
I've
they
read
put notes
a book
around
that,
they put notes around the rooms. They have a person that goes through near-death experience. They ask them what the notes say. They can't tell them. They did the same thing with intercessory prayer.
but I've also seen at least 20 near-death experiences where those
Where they claim
experiences,
that they do that.
yeah, but not just they
Okay,
claim.
do you have any peer-reviewed papers that have that?
Sure, yeah.
Because I can
I
give
know
you
there's a guy.
peer-reviewed papers about near-death experiences that claim
Yeah.
they're drugs
Yeah.
and just disprove it.
Um,
Same thing with intercessory prayer.
actually, be curious. Please provide peer-reviewed papers that, let's say, either
Don't say disprove or
confirm-
prove that
Oh, okay.
deal with. Yeah, we don't want bias.
But if it's either prove or disprove, wouldn't that be? I kind of want both, you know.
Prove or disprove. Just say papers on topic.
Peer-reviewed papers that address the topic of NDEs. What
that's
are
experiences
the
that probably have to do.
conclusions about their validity? Is that fair?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so we'll let that think for a sec. But numerous peer-reviewed studies have investigated near-death experiences. Here's an overview. Prevalence and characteristics of NDEs. Scoping, review, analyzing prospective studies on NDEs after cardiac arrest found that such experiences occur in approximately 6.3 to 39.3% of patients. That says nothing because you could just say, oh, it's the DMT flooding your brain right before you die, whatever. Research suggests that NDEs may be linked to specific brain activities. For instance, studies have observed high-frequency electrical activity in the brain shortly after cardiac arrest, indicating a hyperactive state that it could explain the vivid experiences reported during NDEs. Again, that's totally fine. I'm totally happy to accept that that's the method by which they happen.
I just say that
it doesn't explain the content of what they're experiencing. It just says how that content is transmitted to the person. But anyway, additionally, okay, then there's like a psychedelic experiment they mentioned. Okay, the Grayson near-death experience scale is a validated tool used to quantify and differentiate NDEs from other experiences. It has demonstrated high internal consistency and reliability, making it useful for standardizing research into NDEs. So we'll put a note on that and maybe go to that and see what that actually says about them. Some researchers argue that NDEs challenge the traditional materialistic view of consciousness. They propose yada, yada, yada. Consciousness might not be entirely dependent on the brain. This perspective suggests the need for broader scientific models to understand consciousness. Okay, fair enough. ChatGPT's conclusion, although I'm going to probe it on this Grayson near-death experience scale, is while NDEs are authentic experiences with consistent features across different individuals, current scientific evidence leans towards neurophysiological and psychological explanations. Again, I would just say at least on the neurophysiological front, doesn't explain the content of what they're seeing. The phenomena are likely rooted in brain activity during critical states, although they continue to provide valuable insights into human consciousness and the death process. Okay, so let me ask, what exactly is the Grayson?
It didn't even provide you near-death experience, or not yet. It didn't provide you peer-reviewed papers.
I think it's actually linking. I think PubMed, like it has all these links here. I think these are peer-reviewed, if you can see. Like this looks like a article. So all these answers have a link to the relevant Grayson near-death experience scale. What does it measure?
Also, to be clear, like the whole DMT thing was that NDEs can be reproduced.
Okay. No, I mean, again, it's like, yeah, I totally believe that there would be a physical method for creating these things.
Y'all just out here putting out fucking soul reproducing drugs.
Yeah, literally.
Make the chemical.
Yeah, this is the thing that always fascinates me, is the life review that everybody reports having. And, you know, I'm sure there's
Well, they have an ego
psychological. Yeah, it's just like, I would just ask the question, why? So the ego death is the how, but what's that, the why? Like, why is it baked into humanity to review your life after you die, especially if there's nothing afterwards?
Because you're about,
or beforehand.
Because you just almost died. It's kind of a
Yeah.
thing where it's like, well, damn, I almost died. Let me review how that happened. Like,
Yeah, except you're not consciously doing it, but I get that could happen on the subconscious level.
yeah, it's like, oh fuck, dude, I did something wrong.
But even that's not a trait that could be passed down genetically, because intrinsically it only happens on the verge of
What
death.
I mean, yes, it would, because if you were on the verge of death and then survived, and then you had an experience where you reviewed that and then never made that mistake again, you would propagate.
I could see that. Yeah, fair enough. Okay,
Yeah.
let me take a piss real quick.
All right.
Okay. So this Grayson scale, 16-item questionnaire. What does it measure? Okay, wait, we got some David chats. NDEs are just the body's response to the death process. There's no evidence they're supernatural, peer-reviewed in a credible journal. Important. So if NDEs are indeed from God, why would he be so vague about it? Well, I think if you listen to the accounts that people have, it's not particularly vague at all. But
What do you mean? It's absolutely vague. People with near-death experiences that experience like vivid dreams, like about Jesus, are usually Christian, and people who are Muslim usually experience about Muhammad, and people who are usually Buddhist don't see fucking Vishnu. Like,
I've actually seen interesting ones of people that are explicitly atheist or explicitly not Christian experiencing.
but then they're usually
a
raised
vision
in
of
around
Christ.
those cultures.
Well, it's totally possible, but then if you're raised around the culture and you're hostile to it and therefore become let's just
you
call
have
it
an
a
ego
non-Christian. But then why? So
Although
then
your
my question would
predetermineds are,
just
like,
then be,
thrown out the window for a bit.
why, when you have no ego, do you resort to Christ? That would be my question. But anyway,
You don't always resort to Christ. You also resort to Muhammad, or you resort to fucking Vishnu, or you resort.
yeah, I
to
mean,
the,
I have no idea. I don't know what I'm not a scientist. I haven't gone into these studies, so it's kind of useless for me to make like shotgun claims about all of them. I don't know,
Like, here
even
we
if
go.
people do.
Cross-cultural influences on NDEs, cross-cultural variations, research comparing NDEs across different cultures such as Japanese and Western experiences reveals significant differences in the elements like interpretations of light in the presence of life reviews, indicating that the cultural background heavily influences the contents of NDEs. A study examined how prevailing societal beliefs impact any NDE reports, finding that cultural expectations can shape the features of these experiences, further suggesting that NDEs are constructed by the mind rather than being supernatural.
Okay, fair enough. Then that's cool. I'm just gonna ask. So the scoring system, each item is scored on a scale of 0 to 2 for a maximum total score of 32, and those features are perceiving a boundary or point of no return, seeing deceased persons or spiritual beings, encountering mystical light, sense of being in an unearthly realm. Then there's the paranormal, out-of-body experiences, awareness of future events, extrasensory perception.
You'd have to test that shit. Like,
Well, they do. That's what this is meant for. The Grayson
no,
scale.
that's what I'm saying. I said you would definitely have to test the fucking future telling shit.
Right. This is the one that's most interesting to me because I've heard of verified examples of this, but I'm gonna get into it here now so we can see if that's true or if I was being tricked, or seeing or hearing events that happened elsewhere. Those are interesting. Those are the most interesting.
Yeah, like if something happens in the next room. Yeah.
Exactly. Or like for instance, if there's a red ball on the roof and nobody even knows it's there, not even the doctors, and then this person has a near-death experience. This is an actual example I heard, and the experience, and not to say that this is how heaven works, this is how death works, but just at least that person's experience was raising out of their body, going through the ceiling of the hospital, through the 3rd floor, through the 4th floor, up past the actual roof of the hospital, noticing, man, there's a little red ball there, having their whole whatever experience, the past or the life review, and talking to angels or whatever they did, coming back and being like, hey, do you guys know there's a red ball up on the roof up there? And then someone goes and checks, and they're like, oh, how the...
Yeah, but see,
is it proof, so how would you explain that?
Is it proof of that if they do it in the name of Muhammad?
Sure, yeah. That's just proof of some... I'm not even talking about... No, it's not proof of Muhammad. I'm just saying, I'm talking about a larger consciousness than one that's confined to the brain.
I'm perfectly okay with conceding that if you want to do that for the points of just like, oh, there's this supernatural. I don't.
Yeah, I don't think there's any sense in which NDA has proved Christianity. That's not really what I'm saying. I'm just saying. We were talking about supernatural versus natural. Like, so the question is, do you
don't care about
this
supernatural? I think God. As long as it doesn't prove God, I don't care. Like, if we're talking about a different topic.
But you said you don't believe in supernatural. But you don't believe in the supernatural. You said any conclusion that involves the supernatural is not a valid conclusion for you. Then I brought up near-death experiences because I said, well, what do you make of those? And then that's why we're here. So are you now saying you do believe in the supernatural, or are you still not convinced?
No, I'm saying that even if the supernatural realm existed, it wouldn't matter for God.
Okay, fine, but I'm just asking what you believe about the supernatural.
Oh, yeah,
and it would matter for God because God is a supernatural conclusion, so you first have to accept
I'm saying it doesn't confirm him.
No, it doesn't confirm him. I completely agree.
Yeah, so
I think we'll totally agree on that. Well, it still matters because if you don't at all believe in the supernatural, you can't confirm God. If you're open to the supernatural,
my arguments. It doesn't matter for me arguing with
you. Well, yeah, I'm just.
Does it matter?
I guess I'm arguing.
Sure.
I'm guessing I'm arguing it matters for your soul on some level, but I'm not. I'm just kidding. I'm not being serious. Okay, so
I don't think these prove the supernatural almost at all. Like,
yeah, well, that's what we're going to dive into because I had a question for ChatGPT. So,
sure.
Listen to this. A score of 7 or higher is generally considered to indicate a genuine near-death experience. So I'm going to ask, what does this model / scale mean by genuine near-death experience?
That it actually happened.
Because that could mean two things.
They mean that it's like there's another realm of like physicality.
Doesn't mean the experience is objectively supernatural or proof of life after death. Rather, it has a technical and clinical definition. A reported experience means a threshold score. Okay, got you. Identifies whether someone had an experience that includes altered consciousness, not explainable by typical dreams or confusion, core phenomenological elements, e.g. peace, light, life, review, out of body, and a consistent pattern found across cultures and individuals.
It would essentially be like a new sense that's proven.
Right. So genuine just means consistent with other NDEs, which is interesting in itself that they be consistent, but you could explain that by biology, I could imagine.
No, you wouldn't, because it has no biological standing, or at least one that we have no fucking clue exists. Like, not even an indication.
Oh, then what do you think they are?
No, I'm saying if they do get a 7, then yeah, that would probably be a very good sign that there's some kind of sense that we have no fucking clue about.
So how many NDEs studied are considered genuine? And I have a follow-up question after this too. Okay. So the Lancet, 344 cardiac arrest survivors in the Netherlands, 18% reported NDEs. All of those were classified as genuine using the Grayson scale. 274. Okay, so there's just a bunch of journals. So they do exist. This is a real category, NDE. There are genuine ones that track across cultures and studies. Now I know that says nothing about supernatural.
I don't know if they track it. I don't know if they track it across cultures. I don't think that they said that. We actually don't know the categories that they. We don't know the categories that they said yes to. We don't, like, for instance, the 155th could be different than the first, and they could get all different check marks on the test.
Mm-hmm.
So we have no idea.
Let me just ask:
if all of them correlated.
Are there genuine NDEs across all cultures? Apparently, according to ChatGPT, yes, but I'm not. We don't have to necessarily believe that. Core features are universally shared. The cross-cultural studies have shown that certain core elements of NDEs are remarkably consistent: out-of-body experiences, feelings of peace or euphoria, movement through a tunnel or darkness towards light, encounters with spiritual beings and deceased relatives, a life
That's
view.
literally wrong, because the Japanese view of it is the opposite.
But that would be actually really interesting if their view is the opposite and yet they still experience these things. That
was the point of the paper I sent, was that it's always that way. And everyone that in the ones that they
in
investigated.
Japan.
Yeah, in Japan, it's like
what were they saying?
The light.
They didn't see like any sort of light or anything.
No, they don't go towards light. Like, that's not a thing. It's not like a cultural thing.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And then they just never.
How did I miss that? Where did you send? Oh, this one you sent. Okay.
I sent it in chat. Yeah.
The prevailing societal models influence reports of near-death experiences. Abstract. Transcendental near-death experiences show some cross-cultural variation that suggests they may be influenced by societal beliefs. The prevailing Western model of near-death experiences, defined by Moody, to explore the influence of this cultural model, we compared near-death experience collected before and after 75. We compared the frequency of 15 phenomenological features. In 24 accounts collected, near-death experience accounts collected after 1975 differed from those collected earlier only in increased frequency of tunnel phenomena, which other research has suggested may not be integral to the experience and not in any of the remaining 14 features defined by Moody. Okay, these data challenge the hypothesis that near-death experience accounts are substantially influenced by prevailing cultural models. These data challenge the hypothesis that near-death experiences are substantially influenced by prevailing cultural models. That's not what you were saying. Unless I misunderstanding the word challenge.
No, it does challenge it.
Okay. So it seems like they're pretty consistent, even given this study, across cultures.
No, there are ones that are across cultures, like the light stuff.
Oh, okay. So like a few of the categories, or like 14 maybe.
Seem to be like universal and like
seem to be universal, and then a few other ones can be influenced by where you're at.
Okay, like the figures you see and shit. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Which
I have another one here
that totally makes sense. If you didn't even know who Jesus was, but you knew like the virgin sun god in my little thing, and then you saw that guy. Of course, you'd see that guy, and maybe you're just seeing.
Yeah.
Jesus
one other thing that I have here is the AWARE study, which is the awareness during resuscitation study.
Okay, interesting. I'd be interested in seeing that.
It was 2014 and ongoing, and they had over 2,000 patients that have no verifiable perception or like hidden images that were seen in the experiment.
And how many of those people had
memories
genuine
or impressions, but none corresponded to the visual targets?
Okay, that's cool. I mean that
like
makes sense. I accept that. What is that called? The AWARE study?
AWARE study, awareness during resuscitation.
Can you summarize?
And there's the whole
awareness during that's gonna be hard for me to spell. I got it. Resuscitation. I don't know. That's a bad spelling, but whatever. It'll figure it out. Study. Okay.
I can send it.
One of the most important. Oh yeah, that'd be great. I'd like to read the abstract directly. Here's a clear, concise summary. AWARE, published in 2014. Lead author, Dr. Sam Parnia. Lasted for 4 years. Whether people retain conscious awareness during cardiac arrest, whether verifiable perceptions occur during this period. Gotcha. To explore the nature and frequency of near-death experiences. Methods. 2,060 patients who suffered cardiac arrest at 15 hospitals in the U.S., U.K., and Austria. They studied resuscitation outcomes, memory, and perception after survival. How do they do that? I guess, like, someone's having a heart attack and they go to the hospital.
No, they volunteer for resuscitation. Resuscitation under controlled conditions is actually really easy.
They induce a heart attack?
Yeah, in controlled situations, really easy. You just fuck with the cardiac arrhythmia of the heart.
That's ethical? You can do that?
If they sign up for it.
Does anyone die this way?
It's like, again, it's like incredibly safe. It's safer than a fucking, like, less people die from it percentage-wise than a heart attack. Or not a heart attack, that's obvious. Less people die from it than shark attacks.
That's wild. I never heard of that.
Like, I can't actually describe to you how easy it is to do.
So to be fair, if you're not, I mean, given if that's the case, that seems flawed to me because it's not genuine.
Like people restart, dying. people restart their they are dying. Their brain is going through it, and it's like it's even better because the near-death experience happens while their brain is still fully active and their brain isn't going through oxygen death. That's
fucking insane. Okay, yeah, like fair enough. I mean,
going through oxygen death, like you're experiencing some weird shit.
Definitely have questions about this study, especially if that's how they're doing it, and not in like a critical way. Just like I never considered that would be how they do things.
Well, I'll put it to you like this: you can induce a heart attack, or you can induce a coma in medical procedures.
Wait, this says of 2,060 patients, 330 survived. So it cannot be this cannot.
You're talking about the AWARE thing. You're talking
about
the
AWARE study. The AWARE study.
That was done. Yeah, that was done in like actual like people who were dying in ERs.
Okay, so people are dying in ERs. They get permission from the family or whatever to like run this little experiment.
No. They just hid shit around the fucking place.
Got you. And then after the patient survived, they asked, "Hey, did you happen to see this thing?" I mean, I wouldn't expect anybody practically to, even if you did have a genuine like out of body experience. I wouldn't expect to be looking for any sort of like little, you're dying, you're literally dead, you're going to quote unquote heaven, whatever you want to call it. Like either it's a hallucination or it's real, and then you're like, I don't know, trying to pay attention to little details in the room that they hit around the room. Anyway, okay, we'll keep going. Anyway, but I'm not trying to be critical. I'm not trying to be overly critical. I don't want to be unfair to this study.
Here, by the way, I sent it in the chat.
Okay, yeah, let's check that out. The world's largest near-death experience study. Is there an abstract? I guess this is it, pretty much. The study includes the themes related. Okay, but what are the results? 39% of patients who survived cardiac arrest and were able to undergo structured interviews described a perception of awareness, but interestingly did not have any explicit recall of events. So that's 39% of the people who survived and were able to answer questions. This suggests more people may have mental activity initially, but then lose their memories after recovery, either due to the effects of brain injury or sedative drugs on memory recall. Makes sense. 46% experienced a broad range of mental recollections in relation to death that were not compatible with the commonly used terms of NDEs. These included fearful and persecutory experiences. Interesting. Only 9% had experiences compatible with NDEs, and 2% exhibited full awareness compatible with OBEs with explicit recall of seeing and hearing events. Well, there you go. I mean, how do you... okay, so not there you go. I don't want to be...
No, they experienced those things. It's not that they...
I guess what I want to ask is... Or I guess the question I'll pose is if there is a single case of, say, the red ball thing. In this study, if it is 2%, maybe it's a lot lower because maybe they experience
It's not
things
enough to
that,
confirm any extra sense. Like, it's not nearly enough.
then how would you explain it? Like, just they kind
I have
of
no idea.
they
I wouldn't know.
guessed right or something.
I have no idea. I wouldn't know.
Okay, but
That's the point of science.
So you're happy to. But what are the possible explanations? I guess is what I'm asking.
I don't know.
All right. To me, okay, I'll present you what I believe the possible explanations are.
I bet you I can guess it.
If there's a single person, no, I'm going to present. I think I'm going to try to present the whole range of possible explanations. So if there's a single person that has this sort of like red ball on the roof moment, one possible explanation is the obvious one that you're going to guess that I'm going to say. There is, a universal consciousness or something that allows this to be the case. Or like that your consciousness does travel outside of your body after death. Whatever. You knew I was going to say that. Another possible explanation would be when you're undergoing cardiac arrest and even brain death in some cases, that doesn't mean your brain isn't still recording the things that you hear in the operating room.
Interestingly enough, that is actually true.
That it does record those things?
Yeah, you still experience those things. Your sensory input is still going through them. It's just that your brain only retracts.
Yeah, but then attach that the researchers sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
When you go unconscious, I'm actually a certified first aid responder now.
Oh, okay, cool, great. Congrats.
So we learned that when you're unconscious, you actually hear everything and experience everything. It's afterwards that you have severe memory loss.
And that makes sense.
But some people don't.
I mean, that makes sense.
But some people don't.
Right. Some people can remember it. Right. Okay. So then, but
like,
attach to that.
There was one girl that was unconscious, but when she was under anesthesia or whatever, and she was put under for her operation, and she heard everything the doctors were saying. Everything. She remembered all of it.
Wow.
It was like terrifying for her.
That's crazy. No, that would be really terrifying. And she didn't wake up from the anesthesia. She just like.
No, she was unconscious. She was not awake, but she could hear.
When she woke up,
it was almost as if she was awake.
Oh, wow, weird.
She described it as like a dream, but like it was all true.
Wow, that's really weird. And cool and interesting, and totally what I would, that aligns with how I think of our senses and the brain, and it's always going, even when you're anesthesia. My understanding of anesthesia is that you're kind of
that's pain, cutting
off the pain, like it's like you're pinching the pain highway closed for a little bit, right? And then that goes with trying to knock you out so that it's not so freaky. But like when they do brain surgery, they don't even knock you out. Apparently, I don't know.
Well, yeah, because there's actually interesting enough, the brain cannot feel pain.
Right, it doesn't have there's no
nervous system there.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yep. If I could stab you in the brain, you wouldn't feel a thing.
Well, really?
I mean, I could stab you in the brain directly, and you wouldn't feel a thing. If I stabbed you through the head, you would feel.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, right. Okay. So, but by the way, just to finish that thought, given the fact that you can, even if you're brain dead or at least heart dead, then you could still perceive like things that are happening in the operating room. It would also require the researchers to have made a experimental error by talking about the things that they put in the so both the experimenters would have to be sort of buffoonish, and then the person would also have to overhear that buffoonery, basically.
Wait, I'm so confused. What buffoonery? What are you talking about?
Well, because the experiment, the way they ran is they hid a bunch of objects around like the hospital, right?
That was one part of it. Yeah, they did that.
Yeah. So I'm saying if they're in this 2%, if there's even one person who like genuinely saw one of these objects or whatever, and I'll present a third option as well. I just thought of a third thing that's I think more likely. Is there
any of the options? I don't know.
Well, that can't be a possible option.
I
don't know. Doesn't answer
it's not a reality.
The question.
It doesn't answer it. It doesn't answer it exactly.
But I'm interested. I'm curious. Even if I can't. Even if I say I don't know ultimately, which I will say, which I'll say right. I'll go ahead and get that out of the way. I'll say that right now. I don't know. I don't know what any of this means or how it works or if it's true or what's true. But I am interested in providing possible like answers to questions we have about reality. I don't know why someone, not you, but why someone wouldn't be interested. I mean, I think that is
People do.
the aim of science, actually. But
Well, I mean, people do, and then they put them to the test. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so, given that this is the test that's done, I'm trying to think like, well, what is the conclusion of this study? And maybe I should just ask them. But
it tells you.
yeah, exactly. But I'm just trying to think of the possibilities right now. So either the researchers are buffoonish and reveal their plot to the brain dead person, and the brain dead person overhears that and then reports it, and that explains how they have a genuine.
I suppose that could. Yeah, I suppose that could be a possible solution.
So a more likely one, I would think. Okay, this one I think you're gonna like. So you are being rushed into the hospital, and maybe you're not even like fully out yet or whatever. You're definitely not on the operating
you just
table.
see one of them on the way.
Yeah, and you just see the baseball that they put on a shelf and just like log that away in your subconscious memory.
You go through it, yeah, sure.
Something like that. I could see that being a possibility. But I don't think there's anything like
and which is the most
substantial about. I think the most likely one is the universal consciousness, but you know.
Oh well, isn't that fun?
Hold on, someone just knocked on my door. I gotta figure out what that is.
While he's gone, I'm gonna look at the chat. Let me see. So if any of these are indeed from God, why would he make it so vague? I would imagine that Reese would say something like they need to leave room for faith, but I can't prove that. So we'll wait and see.
Okay. Yeah, and by the way, the reason I said that the most likely is the universal consciousness is because of my other like structure of my entire worldview. Given those like just what I said, probably the most likely is that you saw the baseball on the shelf and logged it away and yada yada yada, right? Something like that.
People have those experiences all the time, like
deja
vu.
Right, totally. Which is an interesting subject itself, but I would have to know exactly how. That would also require not as buffoonish as the option number 2, but it would require a certain amount of like lack of rigor by the experimenters if that were possible.
But have you ever heard of the opposite of deja vu?
No, what's that?
It's referred to as veja du.
Veja du.
It's veja du. So like deja vu, but backwards, where you have a dream about something in the future, and then you see it in real life. You're like, fuck, I'm having deja vu. Like I've seen it before, but you haven't really seen it before.
You just
dreamt about it.
You had a dream. And does it imply that the dream was like accurate, or?
I've had moments like that, and like to be honest, I just feel like I have a very limited amount of dreams I can come up with like what mountains look like or what houses look like.
Yeah, I'd be curious. Do you remember a specific example of that? And I'm not putting you on the spot because I can't. I've had deja vu all the time, and I can't even remember them specifically. So yeah, I'd be curious what your example of like you had a dream you experienced. Yeah, go for it. Shoot.
I had a dream about a beach once where a lot of shit happened. It doesn't matter about the ship. But the beach looked a certain way. Yeah. And I was reading a manga recently.
And was it the specific manga, or was it like you were reading any manga and you happened to be reading any manga on the beach, or?
Well, no, it was called. It had nothing to do with the beach. It was called The Summer Hikaru Died. The anime is coming out. It's very good.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
But it's called The Summer Hikaru Died, and the beach looked exactly like how I thought it did. The houses exactly where they were. They looked a little bit different because I'm not from Japan.
Got you.
They looked a little bit different, but the mountain looked exactly the same. The beach looked exactly the same.
Wow.
And it's actually the first manga I ever read with my girlfriend before she was my girlfriend.
Wait, just so I'm clear. So you were reading this manga, and then you had a dream in which you envisioned the setting of the manga, or that was in the dream as well? I'm sorry. I'm just getting.
So I had a dream like years ago. I'm talking like when I was 16.
Okay, gotcha.
This year, like 2 months ago, maybe, I read this manga with my to-be girlfriend.
Gotcha.
And I saw this, and I was like, I've seen this fucking place before. and
Whoa.
I was
And it
like
was in the dream.
freaking out. I was like,
That
this
is
weird.
so. What do you make of that? I mean, really? Curious.
The beaches only look a certain way a lot of the time.
There's only so many beaches. What about the mountain in relation to the beach? What were the? What,
I mean,
what were the most? What was the most striking detail? What made you go, whoa? Well, what like made you
like a
even
crescent
connect
shape.
this dream to that?
it was like a crescent shaped inning of the beach, like almost like a little alcove.
Mm-hmm.
That was like crescent shaped, and the mountains got bigger towards the sea than they were taken away from the sea. So
Wow.
but I mean, again, mountains only look certain ways, and I don't even know if it was a mountain. It was more like a hill. Have you ever heard of the cliffs of?
Cliffs of
Oh my
Dover.
God, how am I forgetting? No, the cliffs of Moher.
Oh, okay. No, I don't
They're meant to be the 10th wonder of the world, or what, 7 wonders? Is it
Cliffs of Moher,
the
hear
8th
that.
wonder of the world?
Yeah.
It's in Ireland.
Yeah, you know,
place.
I have heard of these. I saw a video. Maybe it was. I think it was Ewan McGregor came here or something on his motorcycle. That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Yep, and so
Yeah.
that looks very similar as well. I'm not saying it looks exactly 1-to-1 as much as this one does, but it looks very similar. And so,
Sure.
you know, reasonably, I'm kind of just like, okay, there's only so many ways mountains can look. There's only so many ways beaches can look. And
Yeah.
I came up with this one. It looks very similar. And like, that's it.
Yeah, I know. I do. I'm obviously. I think you genuinely did have a vision, especially because this is you mentioned this is like your.
Oh, my girlfriend, yeah.
It's like your girlfriend. There's there's a emotional sort of heaviness in a good way component to it that like this is like an inflection point in your life, perhaps.
I mean, I'm gonna be so real. Reading the actual manga, like, like the actual emotions I felt reading the manga were way stronger than this. Like, dude, that manga is so
Then the beach moment.
walking. Yeah, like that manga is really like weird for me.
Yeah, so
Like it's like emotionally fucked for me. Like I
Yeah.
don't like it. So it's basically about like
it hits you really deep in your core, right?
so the Summer Hikaru Died is about two boys, and one of them goes to the forest to do something for their ancestors that all of their like ancestors do. Like leave an offering so like a ghost doesn't come to the town and
Right.
destroy it.
Yeah. Weird Japanese pagan shit. Yeah. Gotcha.
He falls and dies in the mountain on the way, and he's like, I'm sorry I couldn't do anything. I'm sorry I couldn't protect everyone in the city.
Very
And
Bridge to
then
Terabithia.
This isn't the main character, by the way. It is very Bridge to Terabithia.
Yeah.
But basically what happens is this is the first chapter, by the way. It was originally a one shot, and it got turned into an entire manga.
Oh, wow.
But basically what happens is the monster possesses his body, enters it, and then goes he makes like one final wish before he dies, which is I don't want my best friend to be alone. And so the monster
Like follows
takes over
him
his
around.
body and pretends to be him.
Oh.
But the guy was such good friends with him that he's like, you're not Hikaru, are you?
Wow.
And he's just like, and like that moment, dude, when they're like eating ice cream and he's like happy and they're both happy, he's like, you're not Hikaru, are you? It's like,
Damn.
please, I don't want to have to kill you.
Yeah. So I
And
mean,
it's like,
that's
the art is really eerie. I
Oh,
was just
the kid
watching
has
it.
to- the kid has to kill
I
him?
was just reading it.
Wow.
The kid doesn't have to kill him. No. The art is really eerie. Like look up right there, like the summer Hikaru died. It's eerie. It's like
Oh yeah, I can look that up.
Weird.
The summer card. So what's interesting to me is like, so you're reading this manga. It has an emotion. Oh yeah, that is.
the guy in the
that
white hair is
creepy.
the monster.
Yeah. Oh, that's creepy.
It's like eerie.
Yeah. Definitely.
That's what the monster looks like inside, by the way. See all those black like flowers and shit. That's what he looks like.
Very creepy. Yeah. Look at this.
That's the whole. Yeah, he puts his like fucking hand in his chest. And he's empty.
Something alive inside me. Jesus.
Yeah, he's like
So
empty.
creepy.
He's not.
This
He's like just skin.
Okay,
There's
so
like a dimension inside of him.
yeah, the interesting thing is, so you read this manga, it has a deep, profound, like emotional impact on you. Then what you would expect is that you would have a dream about it afterwards. But the interesting thing is that you had the dream years before the emotional impact of it, which to me implies
The
some sort
scene-
of connection between the future and the past that is not as
The
simple as we think.
scene the scene where so the monster has genuine emotions as well. Like he actually really likes this kid. He so the weird thing about the chapter that appeared, don't read that.
Jesus Christ,
just
what
like
is it?
it's a joke. It's a joke. He's joking with him. He's
Yeah, this
fucking
is
with him
classic
and
like anime stuff. Yeah, I get it. I get
yeah,
it.
he's like absolutely traumatized being inside an eldritch horror, and then he's like, "Oh my god!" like
Yeah.
that's what he actually looks like. That.
Oh my jeez.
But basically, the manga that the beach appears in is the monster is like, "I will kill you one day because I just feel like killing you, so I'm gonna kill myself. I'm gonna drown myself."
Wow.
But he doesn't. He convinces him not to.
Wow.
I mean, that doesn't have any special meaning for me because I've never considered suicide.
Right. I was gonna ask if you feel existential anxiety at all from.
No, zero amount.
Okay, that's good. That's
like the whole
very
thing
good.
about like,
I'm happy about that.
I'm like an optimistic nihilist.
Right.
Like
What
I
you
want to
might-
stay alive. For the main reason I want to stay alive is one, I just don't want to die. But if I had to pick out some reasons, I don't want to die before GTA 6 comes out.
I know, right? Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Don't want to die before the next Elder Scrolls game comes out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just simple shit like that. It's the simple shit. It doesn't have to be great, grand. Like I want to see.
Right.
Like the civilization I live in afterwards. Like it's not that big, dude. I'm not.
Yeah.
That big, like,
And to me, even when I was an atheist, I had the same, or I guess you would call me an agnostic or whatever. Although I guess you would say they're not different.
I would call you an agnostic atheist.
I know. Yeah, exactly. Although I was, to be fair, I was probably more like an agnostic, except for like 3 months of being super. And I say
your own definition of atheist, like.
it's not my own. It's whatever. We're not getting back into this. But anyway, so even when I was that, I was like, yeah, I want to see the future.
Not even the problem of what
I
atheist means. It's the problem of what agnostic means. Like agnostic means something very fucking specific.
Yeah, and so does atheist, which atheism as in a non-belief in God, no God.
Yeah, I mean,
atheistic, no God. So you believe there is no God.
No, but agnostic just means no knowledge.
Right.
Like, so, when I say I'm agnostic, I'm saying I'm fucking brain dead. Like,
no, of course not.
No, exactly. Like,
Yeah. Anyway, we have had this. I don't think people are interested in this conversation anymore.
yeah, I agree.
Oh damn, no, I don't remember it. Well, we do have other NDE stuff to look into, but
I think we're talking about the experience I had or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, we were talking about, yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, so I'm very happy to hear that you don't feel existential dread, because that was something that eventually, it seems like that is a high probability outcome from.
I'm like the happiest person I know, dude.
Nihilism.
Like I'm gonna be
Well,
so
that's
real.
good. That's great.
I'm the happiest person I know.
Yeah, that's awesome. A young man in love.
I mean, before that.
But even before that, no, that's great. That's great. I'm really not doubting that. I'm actually genuinely happy to hear that, because
she's also an atheist. I don't know her reasons.
Great.
But she is.
Great. Good.
Great. Bitch, her soul is going to be damned to eternity. What do you mean, great?
Now we're getting it. No, it's not great. I'm just not totally surprised by that. I guess what I was saying great too is I'm assuming she's happy as well, or at least makes.
I mean, we never discussed it, so.
Yeah.
Me. Hold on.
Oh yeah, good. Yeah, it's not something that usually comes up in a relationship anyway. All right, brother, you gotta go.
It never did. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
I'll talk to you all later.
All right, peace, brother, peace. Well, thanks for joining. Okay. Anyone? I'm gonna keep digging into this NDE stuff because I am curious, and I think this is a potential pathway to, at the very least, it implies some sort of pantheism if these NDEs are genuine. Even if one of them is genuine, I think it implies some sort of pantheism. And I mean genuine. Like, the only explanation is that this person had an actual out-of-body experience. And it would literally only take one. I think there are hundreds. So let me ask, how many recorded examples, and for David here, in peer-reviewed studies are there of veridical perception? And so you guys understand what we're talking about here. Veridical perception is the accurate awareness of the environment during unconsciousness. That may occur, though very rare. Veridical perception. That's what I'm talking about genuine. And maybe you can still resist it, but we'll see. The accurate information about the physical world during a near-death experience while clinically unconscious or dead, and later reporting it in a verifiable way. What peer-reviewed studies show, while veridical entities are rare, several well-documented cases exist in peer-reviewed medical and psychological literature. Let's see if we got any. Okay. However, the total number of confirmed, independently verified cases is small. Again, doesn't matter if it's small. If it's literally just one, that's something to think about at the very least. Challenge the small due to challenges in verifying subjective experiences. Yeah, that makes sense. That's gonna be hard. Low survival rates from cardiac arrest, lack of controlled conditions in emergency settings. Yeah, so you wouldn't expect there to be a lot, even if it's a real phenomenon. You would not expect there to be a lot. But even though it's so hard to get these, in the AWARE study there was one confirmed veridical perception. I mean, that's huge. So even if there's just one, what are we dealing with here? A man accurately describes sounds and events in the ER for 3 minutes post-cardiac arrest, verified by medical staff. Now, I get what you're saying. That could be your dead brain just sort of doing its job over time after the heart stops. I could see that as a possible explanation. Sabom, 5 to 6 veridical cases. Patients describe, I've heard of this too. Yeah, patients describe medical procedures accurately that they could not have known. Peer-reviewed background, but mostly qualitative. So for an example of that would be, I heard this actual example one time. A woman, cardiac arrest, unconscious, brain dead, clinically dead. The doctor has a tic. The doctor has, it's not quite Tourette's or whatever, but some sort of OCD, where he puts on his left glove first, then his right glove, then he snaps his left glove twice, then he snaps his right glove twice, and then he does the surgery. And this woman after being dead, describes his method of putting on his gloves. And if I remember correctly, he wasn't even in the room. So, what do we do with that kind of stuff, fellas? What do we do there? You could just say I'm lying. I think that's what you'd have to say. Or the doctor was lying because it was the doctor that was describing it. Although I don't know what he would get out of that, but several cases suggestive, not all verified. Patients had detailed perceptions, but objective verification was often limited. 10 to 20 detailed anecdotal cases. Okay, so around 10 to 15 well-documented, peer-reviewed cases of veridical perception exist with objective corroboration. Yeah, and then there's tons, which are probably some of the ones that I heard, that are just not peer-reviewed, verified, but just sort of anecdotally are food for thought. Most entities do not include this type of perception. Again, you would expect that, even if the point of them, even if they are real, you would expect that they wouldn't all be veridical like this. Yeah, and then this is what the skeptics have to say. Residual brain activity, that's probably the strongest case. Constructed memories doesn't make sense in the case of veridical cases, because how do you construct a memory of something you didn't witness that did actually happen? You couldn't do that. So, interesting. I'm going to ask, what is the most interesting example of interesting and verifiably legitimate example of a veridical perception from a peer-reviewed study? The AWARE study involves a man referred to as subject 1. Patient, middle-aged man, suffered cardiac arrest in a hospital. No heartbeat for 3 minutes, confirmed by ECG monitor. Later resuscitated and stabilized. This up here also said he had no measurable brain activity, which would be interesting. And then you could say, well, maybe he heard it through his unmeasurable brain activity. I'm not sure. Maybe that's valid. I'm not a scientist. What he reported, he described observing the resuscitation from outside his body, hovering above. He correctly described the exact sequence of actions taken by the resuscitation team, the specific sounds of the automated defibrillator, the appearance and clothing of specific staff in the room. Now, that's interesting. That one is the most interesting. Okay, because for these, if you're going to presume that brain dead doesn't actually mean brain dead, then, okay, maybe you remember, maybe your brain dead brain could take note of, like, what things happen to the body during its brain deadness. Maybe you could guess, based on movies and TV and even, again, like your brain dead memory, what the defibrillator sounds like. The appearance and clothing of specific staff in the room. That's a hard one. How do you explain that? Because your eyes don't work. I mean, you're dead. That's not something you would be focused on. It's not something happening to your body. It's not something that's like, unless literally all he said is like, we might need more details. Because if he's like, they were all wearing scrubs, then okay, fine. That's not that convincing. And then the layout of the emergency room and what happened in chronological order is also interesting, especially if he's not a doctor or anything, has no idea what's supposed to happen. Verification of medical staff confirmed the sequence and timing of the actions. The defibrillator sounds reported occurred after 30 seconds of no heartbeat, and the perception lasted up to 3 minutes after confirmed clinical death. He could not have seen or heard these things through normal sensory means due to being unconscious and having no measurable brain activity during this period. This case is exceptional because it was reported spontaneously by the patient, not prompted. So that is interesting, because if you prompt it, then maybe you make up a story. But this guy was like, guys, that was weird. I saw something, and this is what I saw. And it corresponded precisely with timed medical events. All the details are confirmed. The patient's heart had stopped for longer than the brain typically supports consciousness, about 20 to 30 seconds without oxygen. They said 30 seconds to 3 minutes. So, what about convincing anecdotal evidence, either reviewed or not? Wasn't there something where a patient witnessed a red ball on the roof? Okay. Reported by Kimberly Clark Sharp, a social worker at Harborview Medical Center, Seattle, Washington. Multiple books and NDE anthologies. A woman named Maria had a cardiac arrest and was successfully resuscitated. Afterwards, she told Kimberly Clark Sharp that during her NDE, she had an out-of-body experience and floated outside the hospital building where she saw a red tennis shoe on a third-story window ledge. So, strange. What Maria described, a worn red tennis shoe, positioned on the outer ledge of a window several stories above ground. The lace was stuck underneath the heel, only visible from a specific angle outside the hospital, certainly not her own hospital bed. Verification, Kimberly was skeptical but investigated. She found the red shoe exactly as described, including the lace stuck under the heel, the shoe's worn appearance, its location on a ledge that could not be seen from inside the hospital or from ground level. Why it's convincing, the details were specific, verifiable, and unlikely to be guessed. I mean, truly impossible to guess that. Why would you even think there was a shoe on a ledge, even if you were making a guess? The patient was clinically unconscious, and there was no possible way she could have physically seen the shoe. And it supports the idea that NDEs may involve real perception beyond the body. So the caveats are not peer-reviewed. They could be lying. That's basically what the critics say. They're lying. I think that is what a skeptic does. That is the job of a skeptic. Okay. I think we got it today, fellas, ladies and gents. So thank you for coming along and joining and enjoying, hopefully, this conversation of NDEs. Thank you, David, for being in the chat and contributing. Yeah, we were trying to deal with mostly peer-reviewed. And you said if NDEs are indeed from God, why would he be so vague about it? I don't particularly see how he's being vague, to be honest. It seems pretty impressive. And the experiences we didn't even get into the experiences because, we happen to be talking with atheists, and that's fine, so we have to meet them on their level. But when you get into the content of the NDEs, if you want to say a bunch of stuff like, oh, the brain does this, and, the biology makes you fear this and want this and review your life and all that, I just don't know what to make of the way that people turn their lives around after that, the messages that are given to them, the interactions they have with family members that have unexpected consequences, but also unexpected content. You would think if you were hallucinating a dead family member, they would say exactly what you would expect them to say. So when they say something that is not what you expect, then at least that's cause for pause. Cause for pause. That's my new animal shelter that I'm starting. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Super fun. Good stuff. Christ is risen. Christ is king. Praise God.